Far Cry's DNA can easily be boiled down: a huge natural environment, guns, and a fish out of water protagonist. But not Far Cry Primal. Although instead of reinventing the wheel, Ubisoft took Far Cry near the time where the wheel was invented, 10,000 BCE. Pushing the series so far back in time seems antithetical to the very forward-looking nature of sequels, where mechanics are advanced and refined. So does this game feel like it was made in the Stone Age, or has it evolved into something greater? Let's find out here in this review of Far Cry Primal. Trading bullets for arrows has a rippling effect that changes more than how the combat unfolds, and all of it is done to enforce its prevalent survival theme. The gorgeous fictional world of Oros is deadly, filled with vicious beasts and rival tribes ready to end your genetic lineage just because you, to them, are an uncooked walking hamburger. To overcome these odds, you have to use the environment to your advantage through crafting. Far Cry 3 and 4 had rewarding loops of looting and crafting, and Primal pushes that to its limit. You'll still need to skin 3 tapirs to get a bigger sack, but you'll also need to harvest tree branches for arrows and kill animals for the all-healing powers of raw meat. Scavenging the savage landscape for more than just a bigger arrow quiver gives importance to exploration, as it directly rewards the most vigilant hunters and gatherers. Through these systems, Primal links the player to its world in a better, more tangible way than the other Far Cry games. Primal's survival theme doesn't take adapting to fit the way combat and stealth play out. Conquering Outpost, which comprises most of the game's main and side missions, remains faithful to its predecessors by blending stealth and action through a number of different interwoven systems. These tiny sandboxes highlight the game's randomness, as well as how many different ways a particular scenario can be tackled. Refreshing freedom like this stays true to its heritage, however the time period slices out a chunk of possible strategies. Staying hidden, while harder than previous games due to the annoying hornblower enemies, works as well as it ever has. Getting caught is a whole other story, since it's hard to go guns blazing when there are no guns to blaze. Spears and melee combat become the analogous for firearms, and this is where the game begins to unhinge. Clubbing a caveman looks, feels, and sounds brutal, it just isn't very strategic. There's no blocking, dodging, or any other defensive options. It's just hit hard or hit really, really hard. Clearing out areas can easily devolve into bludgeoning every enemy one at a time, which isn't diverse or strategic enough to be a rewarding option. The savagery of the melee and the satisfaction of sneaking earns Outpost clearing the privilege of being the default gameplay style. It just hasn't made the smoothest transition to this less advanced era. Stealth and melee combat are enhanced by the new beast taming system. Rather than purely watching the wildlife interact with the world, the Beastmaster system grants you control over most of the fauna. They'll stick by your side and help you clear enemies as long as you keep them fed and pat them on the head when they are a good boy. Commanding the wildlife adds an extra dimension to both gameplay styles, but the subsequent link to the world is equally as noteworthy. Just as scavenging meat and vegetation yields tangible gameplay benefits and requires you to interact with the world, finding new animals bonds you with your surroundings in the same way. It's that thematic consistency of binding the player to the world that makes Far Cry Primal feel more personal and interconnected than the modern day entries in the series. Primal's Survivor mode is the purest form of this connection. In this optional and highly customizable difficulty, the hostility of Oros is cranked up to 11. Night is darker, the HUD is almost non-existent, supplies are less plentiful, and more are all tweaked in a way to make you feel more vulnerable and push you to be more cautious. It negates many of the common luxuries of modern games and injects an old-school sense of dread and consequence, which is exemplified by the optional permadeath. Difficulty modes rarely add to a game the way Survivor mode does, and it's the perfect fit for Primal's survival aesthetic and player-world connection. Although the game doesn't connect the player to the story with the same grace. Takhar is the Wenja tribe's newest hope against the rival Cannibal tribe and Fire tribe. Primal never delivers the grander story it halfway promises to tell, and thus is possible to sum up in that one simple sentence. While the secondary characters are inventive, memorable, and animated incredibly well, their words are as foreign as they are hollow. They'll break into dramatic speeches that are interesting but don't push any overarching narrative forward. The Stone Age begs to be narratively explored, considering its scarcity in media in general, but instead, most of Primal's main campaign missions have the ramifications of glorified side missions and don't have a deeper, more dramatic layer that advances the thin plot. None of the story is outright bad, far from it. It just doesn't say much at all either way and is about as primitive as the cavemen it stars. Far Cry Primal has plenty of the series' staples, but has them in unorthodox ways. Altering Far Cry's bullet points to focus less on gunplay and more on survivability was a bold choice and works out more in the game's favor than not. The beautifully rendered, primitive world of Oros also offers one of the most unique and untested playgrounds that most media tends to shy away from. While the story reflects its unevolved cast and only alludes at something greater, Far Cry Primal gives gaming its much needed peak to the Stone Age with a proven open world crafting formula that makes Far Cry games so hard to put down. Although, unlike those that set the foundation, Primal's unrelenting commitment to its vision through its mechanics and world makes this the most interesting of the franchise, even if a few of its arrows don't strike their target. Far Cry Primal gets an 8.5 out of 10. As always, thanks for watching and see you next time.
Takar